بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, Alhamdulillah, we are in the last Jumu'ah night and Jumu'ah day in the blessed month of Ramadan. Many of the ulama have mentioned in the past that in the final 10 nights of Ramadan, when you have the night of Jumu'ah combined with one of the odd nights in the last 10 days of Ramadan, then it is highly likely that inshallah that night could be Laylatul Qadr. That is the night which we are in tonight. Respected listeners, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he is mentioned to us in a hadith. You know, people can make claims all they wish. People can have certain beliefs and thoughts about themselves that I'm a great Muslim and I'm a great man or I'm a great woman. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he clarified for us who is the one who has perfected their iman, who is the one that has perfected their faith, polished their hearts and made their iman firm in Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, the hadith is narrated by Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu. He says, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من والده وولده والناس أجمعين. None of you will have perfected their iman. Your faith will not be complete. You will have some bit of nuqs, some bit of deficiency, until and unless what? Until I become more beloved than a person's father, than a person's child, and more than every person that exists. I should be more beloved to them. This is what Rasulullah ﷺ has taught us. The love for the Prophet ﷺ, this is the perfection and the completion of our deen, respected listeners. Any action that you do in this life, the thing which would separate it from being ordinary and from being golden, that is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wallahi, a simple thing like sleeping, a simple thing like eating food, a simple thing like making salam. When you do it the ordinary way, without the sunnah, it's just an action, it's just a deed. There's not much value to it. When you bring in the blessings of the sunnah, when you bring in the beauty of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam into any action, you've made it valuable. You've made it accepted in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You've adorned it. You've made it acceptable in Allah's eyes. You've made it beautiful. You've made it worthy of acceptance. Very, very simple. Just adding the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Respected listeners, the way that we can implement the sunnah, the way that we could become closer to the Prophet ﷺ is developing love for him. Understanding and valuing who he was as a person. Realizing what sacrifices he made for us. Understanding and coming to terms that in this dunya, a person can say La ilaha illallah as long as they wish. 1,000,000 times they can say La ilaha illallah. But until and unless Muhammadur Rasulullah does not come onto the tongue and into the heart, such a person will not be a Muslim. Such a person's faith will not be complete. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he's the one that taught us this deen. You know, wallahi, we should just think about this. Just think of this one point. How many of us are enjoying Ramadan? How many of us are enjoying the suhoors, enjoying the iftars, enjoying the moments of dua, enjoying the moments of salatul tarawih? Wallahi, if it wasn't for the Prophet ﷺ, we wouldn't have had any of this. We wouldn't have had one verse to read. We wouldn't have had one blessed day of Ramadan. Every blessing that we see in our lives that Islam has brought us, it was the Prophet ﷺ that came. And I just wish to mention a few points about how the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, how they loved the Prophet ﷺ, how they thought about the Prophet ﷺ, how they wished to always be with the Prophet ﷺ. One of the companions radiallahu anhum, he comes to the Prophet ﷺ, very, very concerned, very, very worried, very, very perturbed, very anxious. And he asked the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what's the matter? Why are you so worried? What's on your mind? You look like you're very troubled. What did the Prophet what did he say to Rasulullah ﷺ? Look at the concern that these people had, dear listeners. Today, what are the things on our minds? We might be worried about things going on at home. We might be worried about things happening in the workplace. We might be worried about our taxes. So many different things are on our mind. Look at what this Sahabi radiallahu anhu, what was his concern? What was he thinking about in his absence? He says, Ya Rasulullah, in Jannah, your status and your maqam is very, very high. Your status and your maqam is extremely, extremely high. So in Jannah, you will be in A'la al-'Illiyin, you will be in Firdaus, you will be in the highest stages of Jannah. And people like me, first of all, we don't know if we'll even reach Jannah. If we do reach Jannah, perhaps we'll be in a very, very low portion of Jannah. So Ya Rasulullah, in this dunya, when I'm troubled, when I'm facing difficulty, I ease my heart by visiting you and looking at your Mubarak face. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I ease my pain, I ease my worries, I ease my difficulties by looking at your blessed face, Ya Rasulullah. So when the believers are granted Jannah, Ya Rasulullah, how will I look at your face if you are granted the highest levels of paradise and I'm all the way down here in the lower levels of paradise? Look at their concern, look at what they're thinking of. They would always think of the Prophet ﷺ. Rasulullah ﷺ tells him, Al-mar'u ma'a man ahabba. The person will be with whomsoever they love. You will be with whomsoever you love. If you love the Prophet ﷺ, you will inshaAllah be with him. There was a woman in the battle of Uhud. What happened? We all know the battle of Uhud was a very difficult battle. Muslims faced a lot of difficulties. Many shuhada, many people lost their lives. This woman was coming back from Uhud. And she was informed. Your father, your brother, your husband. 3 very, very important people in your family. 3 very, very important people in your life that are extremely close to you. Your father, your dear husband, your dear brother. All 3 of these, they have become shaheed. They've become martyrs in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you can imagine the level of gham, the level of difficulty, the sadness. A woman at that moment, she'll break down. She'll start screaming. She'll start wailing. What does this woman do? She says, "Ma fa'ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam." She says, father is gone, brother is gone, husband is gone. Tell me, where is the Prophet alayhi salam? Is he okay? They said, yes, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is fine. She said, no, not until I see with my own eyes. They indicated to her, where is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And she glanced upon the Prophet alayhi salam, and she said, كُلُّ مُصِيبَةٍ بَعْدَكَ لَيَسِيرٌ. As she said, every calamity and every difficulty after you, O Rasulullah, every calamity is easy for me after that, as long as you are alive and you are protected. Look at the love that they had. They would give their own lives for the safety of the Prophet ﷺ. Can we at least give up our desires for the sake of the upliftment of the Prophet's sunnah? Give up our desires. My heart likes this. My inclination is towards this. I feel like doing this. No, leave what you feel. Do what the Prophet ﷺ feels for you. These people, they gave up everything for the Prophet ﷺ. Talha bin Ubaidillah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, in one of the battles in Uhud, the disbelievers, they start raining arrows onto the Muslims, onto the Prophet ﷺ. These companions radiallahu anhum, they stand in front of the Prophet ﷺ and they shield him with their own chest. They put their own chest. The arrows can hit me, but it should not hit the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of them, radiallahu anhu, he was shielding the Prophet ﷺ with his hand. His hand was struck multiple times. His entire arm became paralyzed. And the later generations that would come, it was like a piece of history. They would come just to look at his arm. They would come just to look at his hand. And they would say, that is the blessed hand. They would kiss and they would say, this is the blessed arm that became paralyzed in defense of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Respected listeners, how can we love the Prophet ﷺ and how can we become closer to him? Follow his sunnah, follow his commands, follow his lifestyle, follow his guidance. Develop a relationship with him by reciting excessive durood, excessive salawat and salam upon the Prophet ﷺ. Especially now is the most blessed time, the days of Friday nights and Friday in the daytimes. Inna salatakum ma'rudatun alayya. Your salawat upon me, they're presented to me. You know, some people today, they send letters to their favorite celebrity, to their favorite athletes. They send letters in hope, maybe they'll read it, maybe they'll reply. Maybe one day, they get thousands of emails and letters, but maybe they'll read mine one day. Allahu Akbar. Every salam that you send to the Prophet ﷺ, he reads your salam. He replies to your salam. He hears your salam via the angels and he replies to the salam. Once, Maulana Yunus Patel, rahmatullah alayh, was a great alim of South Africa. He was in Medina Munawwara and he's just sitting down and he's looking up at the sky. So some of his students, they came and they said, Shaykh, what are you looking at? You're just looking in the sky of Medina. What are you thinking about? What are you looking at? He says, no, I'm just enjoying looking at all the flights that are coming in. Has anyone ever seen an airplane on top of Masjid Nabawi? We've never seen it before. Airplanes don't come. So they said, Shaykh, what are you talking about? There's no airplanes here. There's no flights over here on top of the masjid. We don't see any aircraft. What do you mean you're looking at the flights? He said, don't you know? All over the world right now, there are people in America, there are people in Canada, UK, India, Pakistan. All over the world, every mu'min that sends salutations and salam upon the Prophet ﷺ, the flights of the angels are coming in one by one and they're delivering the salams to the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine. This is how we can develop a relationship with Rasulullah ﷺ. Your name, your father's name, the salam is sent to the Prophet ﷺ as a gift. He receives it and he replies. The closest of people to the Prophet ﷺ on Qiyamah will be who? أَكْثَرُهُمْ عَلَيَّ صَلَاةً. Those of them who recited the most salawat upon me. And the people that recite abundant salawat, wallahi, they develop a relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. Look at our akabir, look at our pious predecessors. How many of them, they had diseases, they had ailments, they had sicknesses. They would abundantly recite durood. They had this relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. And what would happen? The Prophet ﷺ would come in their dreams. The Prophet ﷺ would read a dua for them. The Prophet ﷺ would blow something on them. And suddenly they would wake up. Blind people, suddenly they could see again. Lepers, suddenly their skin is cured. Imam Busayri rahimahullah, look at his entire story, what happened with him. The ash'ar that he read. The Prophet ﷺ condoned and appreciated the salawat which he was reciting. The love of the Prophet ﷺ will do nothing but bring blessings into our lives. Halima Sa'diyya radiyallahu ta'ala anha. Look at the blessings that happened in her life when the Prophet ﷺ came into her life. We all know the story. Halima Sa'diyya, she came to Makkah from the Bedouin lands. What they used to do is they used to take care of the young children, they would nurse them, they would feed them, take care of them, they would get some payments, it would be a good financial investment, then they would bring the kids back. And the parents wanted their kids to go to the deserts, it would make them very, very strong. So, the Prophet ﷺ was an orphan. All the nurses that came, they said, this small child, he's an orphan. We're not going to get paid much. Nobody took the Prophet ﷺ. Halima Sa'diyah, she comes, her donkey extremely slow, last in line. She was a poor lady. She came all the way in the end because her means were very, very meager. Little means she had. Her donkey was too slow. Finally she comes, she sees the only person left is this Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. She said, okay, there's nobody left, let's give it a try. Nobody else wanted to take him. She takes Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and suddenly what happens? The first thing she notices, that donkey that couldn't move, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is sitting on it, the donkey is moving extremely fast. It's passing by everybody. Suddenly this old, weak donkey that was so slow is going now faster than the horses. Barakah and blessings already. She says when the famine would hit, all of the neighbors, they would send their goats and sheep, they would come back thin. There's no milk. They're still thin. They can't eat. There's no grass for them to be fed with. When Halima Sa'diyah took the Prophet ﷺ into her care, the goats would go out into the same fields. They would come back full. Their udders would be full. They would give full milk. Blessings and barakah of the Prophet ﷺ in their lives. Same thing for us, respected listeners. When you bring the Prophet ﷺ in your life, by following his sunnah, by reading durood sharif upon him extensively, the barakah and blessings you will see in your life, inshallah. There's a funny story mentioned. There was one man, so he went on, tablighi jamaat, he went 3 days. So mashallah, the first thing they'll do, they'll give you the sunnah, they'll give you a miswak. So the guy had his miswak, he finished his jamaat, and he's driving somewhere, and he's speeding. So he gets pulled over by the police. He gets pulled over, so he says, officer, come on, I was barely going above the speed limit, give me a break. I wasn't going that fast. He's trying to get the ticket signed off. The cop is not having it. He says, no, you're going above the speed limit, I have to write you down. He writes the ticket, and then suddenly he looks inside, and he sees near the cup holder, there's a little stick. It's the miswak. So he says, what is that? Can you show me what is that thing? He lifts it up, and he says, oh, you're talking about this? He says, yeah, what is that? He says, no, nothing much. This is just my toothbrush. He says, oh, that's your toothbrush. He says, okay. He rips up the ticket. He says, officer, what happened? We were just arguing so long, you weren't willing to let go of the ticket. But now suddenly when you saw the toothbrush and you saw my miswak, now you ripped the ticket up. He says, yes, brother. If you can't even afford a nice toothbrush, how are you going to afford to pay this ticket off? So the person, he drives off, he says, alhamdulillah, see the sunnah, it gives you blessings not only in the akhirah, but it gives you blessings in dunya. It'll save you from a few tickets also. Wallahi, the sunnah and the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is abwabul khayri kulliha. This is the door for all good things. And last thing I will share with you, a personal story. When we went to South Africa, me and my wife, we were there, and the first week or so, you can imagine, it's a new country, 19, 20 years old, living on your own in a new place, and things were quite difficult. And what happened was, my wife, she had the little Q-tip things, so she put it in her ear and she hurt herself. And something happened, she hurt her eardrum, and she was just finished off. She's crying, extreme pain, I don't know what to do, it's really hurting me really bad. And subhanallah, she read durood and salawat, and she's crying, and we don't know what to do, and eventually she falls asleep. So in the morning, all of a sudden she's smiling, she's happy. I said, what happened? All this, in nighttime you were crying and screaming, now all of a sudden you're smiling, what happened? She says, last night when I was reading durood, reading salutations on the Prophet ﷺ, and I fell asleep, she said, you know what, the way I hurt my ear, I think I should have been injured for a week or so. But what happened last night? Rasulullah ﷺ came in my dream. And he read a dua on my ear, and as soon as that happened, I'm completely pain-free now. Relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. Respected listeners, although the Prophet ﷺ, this hayatud dunya, he's gone, but the Prophets are alive in their graves. It's not impossible to establish a relationship with them. Let's try our best, respected listeners, not only for tonight, but every day of our lives. Do not spend a single day without at least reciting Durood Sharif, at least 10 times. At least 10 times. Wallahi, every salah that you do, every day that you go by, you're benefiting from the ta'limat of Rasulullah ﷺ. You're benefiting from the teachings that he gave us. Every day you use the bathroom, the cleanliness that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Every day you perform salah, that contentment and ease the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Give your gratitude and thanks back to the Prophet ﷺ by sending excessive durood. You send one durood, Allah sends 10 upon you. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us all tawfiq. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.